or post your name and number to GB11 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 7th of March. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more.
Whether it's breaking royal news, Will, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GBNews, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
It's Patrick Christys tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christys tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
No,
because the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Dewbs and Co weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's 9 p.m. I'm Ben Leo tonight.
And our absolute determination to stand with you, unwavering determination.
There he is. Volodymyr Zelenskyy takes refuge in Downing Street after that bruising encounter in the Oval Office.
Gambling with World War III. You're gambling with World War III.
Speaking of which, even staunch Ukraine supporters think Zelenskyy was in the wrong.
What do I think? Complete, utter disaster.
So, where does all this leave Sir Keir Starmer after the Prime Minister promised Donald Trump a state visit to see the King? Also tonight,
the reform...
Not Labour after what that Mike's done.
Not Labour?
No.
Were you not impressed with Mike Amesbury?
Not at all.
Ed Davey thinks women can have... you know what? What do you think about that?
You know what?
A by-election brews in Runcorn, but who might emerge victorious? Of course, I took to the streets to carry out a very scientific and accurate poll, just for your benefit. Joining me on my panel tonight is former Met Police Detective Peter Blexley, the journalist and communications advisor Linda Jubilee, and the former Labour Special Advisor Paul Richards. And just what the hell is going on in Athens? A big 2 hours coming up, including the first of tomorrow's newspaper front pages, hot off the press. But first, let's get your news headlines with Sophie Reaper.
Thank you, Ben. The time is just after 9 o'clock, and these are your latest headlines. Earlier on today, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy arrived at Downing Street for a meeting with Sir Keir Starmer. The British PM was there to greet President Zelenskyy as the pair shook hands outside Number 10 before entering to begin their bilateral meeting. The Ukrainian president is in the UK ahead of a major defence summit in London tomorrow. Of course, Volodymyr Zelenskyy's arrival in the UK follows his brief meeting in the White House yesterday, in which talks with Donald Trump descended into a row. The Ukrainian president travelled to Washington, D.C. as he attempted to secure a ceasefire agreement with Russia and a possible mineral deal with the US. However, the visit ended prematurely, with a signing of an agreement and a joint press conference cancelled following the clash. The Met Police has said farmers could be arrested if they drive their tractors to a march in central London scheduled for Tuesday of next week. Organisers have said the so-called Pancake Day rally is aiming to be bigger and better than the two previous demonstrations as their campaign against changes to inheritance tax rules continues. But now conditions have been imposed under the Public Order Act, preventing demonstrators from bringing tractors other than a limited number already agreed by the organisers. And finally, Dydd Gwyl Dewi Hapus, or Happy St David's Day, to all of our viewers in Wales and those who are celebrating around the world. To mark the day, the Prince of Wales has used his first message delivered in Welsh to wish Wales a happy St David's Day.
Hello. Heddiw, a Dydd Gwyl Dewi, rydym yn dod at ein gilydd I ddathlu Cymru, ei hanes, ei diwylliant a'i phobl anhygoel. O'i golygfeydd anhygoel i'w iaith, mae Cymru'n parhau I ysbrydoli. Heddiw, ni'n dathlu popeth sy'n hudol am Gymru. I bobl Cymru ac I bawb ar draws y byd, Dydd Gwyl Dewi Hapus.
Well, Prince William is far better at Welsh than I am. Those are your latest GB News headlines for now. More from me in the next hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Good evening to you. Well, thank you for your company and welcome to Ben Leo tonight. And happy St David's Day to all our Welsh friends in Wales. It's been an explosive 24 hours, hasn't it, in the world of Volodymyr Zelenskyy at least. And today, this evening, he's taking refuge in Britain after that brutal confrontation in the Oval Office.
I don't know if you can make a deal. The problem is I've empowered you to be a tough guy. And I don't think you'd be a tough guy without the United States. And your people are very brave. But you're either going to make a deal or we're out. And if we're out, you'll fight it out. I don't think it's going to be pretty, but you'll fight it out. But you don't have the cards. But once we sign that deal, you're in a much better position. But you're not acting at all thankful. And that's not a nice thing. I'll be honest, that's not a nice thing.
The Prime Minister welcomed Zelenskyy to Downing Street after that bruising fallout at the White House with Donald Trump and JD Vance, promising his Ukrainian ally Britain will have its unwavering support to Ukraine, including tonight with Rachel Reeves signing a £2.4 billion loan package.
Absolute determination to stand with you, unwavering determination, and to achieve what we both want to achieve, which is a lasting peace for Ukraine based on sovereignty and security for Ukraine. So important for Ukraine, so important for Europe and so important for the United Kingdom.
We are happy and we count on your support and really, we're really happy that we have such partners and such.
So the whole charade in the White House yesterday leaves our Prime Minister in a difficult position, I think, because he went to Washington armed with a state visit to Windsor Castle for President Trump, earning himself a positive nickname for once in the form of Starmer the Charmer. I actually thought he did all right in the Oval Office. A little submissive, and I'm not sure about the crossed legs, but I guess it could have been worse. But anyway, now the Prime Minister must clearly decide whether his loyalties lie with the United States or Europe. Does he want this deadly war to end? 1.5 million Ukrainian and Russian, mostly young men, are dead in trenches in one of the most publicised wars the world has ever seen. So what's it going to be, Prime Minister? Back the US in ending this war or continue with the whatever-it-takes pathway to bankruptcy? And by the way, that trench footage you saw just there is as tame as it comes. The internet is full of absolutely brutal and graphic war videos from both sides that bring the very dark reality of this conflict to light. Meanwhile, the fallout from the Oval Office clash has been a sight in itself, a world divided on whether Trump and JD Vance were bullies or Zelenskyy made a huge mistake by going on the attack and disrespecting the United States. It was box office, as far as I'm concerned, and totally extraordinary. So I guess let's have another little reminder, shall we?
Not in a good position. You don't have the cards right now. With us, you start having cards. But right now, you don't. You're playing cards. You're playing cards. You're gambling with the lives of millions of people. You're gambling with World War III. You're gambling with World War III.
No guesses to see how liberal US media reacted then?
We have never seen anything quite like what happened at the White House today.
Today, Donald Trump irreparably destroyed the 80-year-old post-World War II international order.
An Oval Office ambush of an American ally that will reverberate all around the world and stain America's image for years to come.
That was...
Yeah, typical. But there has been surprising reaction too. This is the moment Josh Rogin of the left-wing Washington Post agreed with a CNN contributor about who was to blame.
I mean, all Zelenskyy had to do today was put on a tie, show up, smile, say thank you, sign the papers, and have lunch. That's it. And he couldn't do that.
Well, I can't believe I'm about to say this, but I actually agree with Scott. And everything that he said was basically right.
Wow.
I know.
And even Republican Senator Lindsey Graham, who, if you don't know him, he's a staunch Ukraine and Zelenskyy supporter, well, he changed his tune too.
What did I think? Complete, utter disaster. I've been to Ukraine 8 or 9 times since the war started. I understand the consequences of Putin's actions against Ukraine. I appreciate what the Ukrainian people have done. They fought like tigers. At the end of the day, I was hoping that this minerals deal, which would be transformative in the relationship, would go over well. I talked to Zelenskyy this morning. Don't take the bait. President Trump was in a very good mood last night. Somebody asked me, am I embarrassed about Trump? I have never been more proud of the president. I was very proud of JD Vance, standing up for our country. We want to be helpful. What I saw in the Oval Office was disrespectful, and I don't know if we can ever do business with Zelenskyy again.
Wow, pretty big coming from him. Yesterday's clash wasn't just a 3-minute shouting match, as you've seen on social media. There was 40 minutes of talks prior to that, which went relatively well and without drama. It was only when Zelenskyy decided to attack JD Vance when the Vice President talked about diplomacy, a comment which I think appeared to be directed at Joe Biden and not Ukraine, as it appeared Zelenskyy perceived. JD Vance then made this point about Ukraine dragging men off the streets to fight on the front line.
Right now, you guys are going around and forcing conscripts to the front lines because you have manpower problems.
Well, it appears that is at least true. There are dozens and dozens of videos of men, brothers, sons being dragged to war. Here's one. Just for the record, no doubt that happens on the Russian side too, but it didn't stop our friend Alistair Campbell getting involved in an attack on JD Vance.
Utterly vile, that man. I've been thinking this for a while about Vance. He's utterly vile, and you really saw it today. And he basically said, have you ever said thank you? When are we going to get gratitude?
Have you said thank you once?
That triggers Trump to say, when are we going to get gratitude?
Some people have reminded Campbell that Vance is a US Marine who served in Iraq and Afghanistan. Campbell, of course, has close links to one of those wars in particular. I say no more, but I do suggest he has a bit more respect for the men and women who served there. Anyway, back in the White House, Zelenskyy was also contending with US journalists in addition to Trump and Vance. One reporter, you'll see here, asked why he wasn't wearing a suit.
My second question for President Zelenskyy. Why don't you wear a suit? Why don't you wear a suit? You're at the highest level in this country's office and you refuse to wear a suit. Just want to see if do you own a suit?
You have problems.
A lot of Americans have problems with you not
Really?
respecting
I don't
the
have
dignity of
such.
this office.
I will wear a costume after this war will finish.
Okay.
Yes, maybe. One,
Maybe something like this.
something like
Yes,
yours,
sir.
yes.
That'd be great.
Maybe something better. I don't know. We will see. Maybe some.
That exchange sparked this reaction from a liberal TikToker who got just a bit too emotional about it all.
This man is fighting for his country. A sovereign nation got invaded. His people were dying. And this motherfucker talks about him wearing a suit. I hate this country.
Well, the good news for Zelensky now is he certainly has support from Britain in the form of the Prime Minister, and breaking today from the King himself. According to The Sun on Sunday, which is out tomorrow, King Charles is throwing open the doors of his country retreat to welcome Zelensky just days after his White House bust-up with Donald Trump. The King's previously given his wholesale support to Zelensky, saying Ukraine has witnessed indescribable aggression following their unprovoked attack at the hands of Russia. Well, I'm joined now by political commentator and former advisor to Bill Clinton, Steve Gill from the United States. Steve, good evening or good day to you, wherever you are. What was your take, really, on the scenes we saw from the White House today? And may I add, I'm not sure if you've seen Zelensky arriving in London this evening with Prime Minister Keir Starmer, a stark contrast to what we saw yesterday in the United States, hugging, embracing him, seeing him off down Downing Street. What do you make of all that?
Well, there is so much to unpack here. First of all, I'm doing a little back of an envelope calculation. Apparently, Keir Starmer has promised $2 billion more to Ukraine, promising to increase the GDP contributions to NATO by another $4 to $7 billion. It's a good thing all those pensioners in London are starving and in dire straits without heating oil, because Keir's spending all their money elsewhere. And wait till he starts dispatching these Russian troops or British troops to fight the Russians. You only have about 75,000 army troops. When he starts dispatching those and they start coming back in body bags, his poll numbers will plummet even lower than where they are. And I know that Zelensky keeps claiming that his poll numbers are great. I suspect the conscript and his family were not among those who were polled who were giving Zelensky such high marks.
Yeah, and as I said, there's dozens of those videos online. And also, by the way, there's Russian ones as well. I mean, both sides are obviously clambering for soldiers. Just on this loan from the UK to Ukraine, it is a loan. It's £2.5 billion that Rachel Reeves has announced tonight. And it's from frozen Russian assets. And also they're scrapping some green things, some green projects here as well, which some, even non-Labour supporters, will approve of, I think. Where does this leave?
Let me raise just real quickly. As a lawyer, you start taking Russian assets, then you're opening the Pandora's box of Russia controls more British and European assets in their country than are controlled by Brussels. China has a lot of assets that are on the international market. Do we really want the Pandora's box of when you get into a dispute, we start taking private property and make that the new rule? That is not going to go well. Also, one other thing, when they're continuing to attack J.D. Vance, keep in mind that I don't think he actually heard, but Zelensky at one point not only was rolling his eyes, but in Russian, not Ukrainian, referred to J.D. Vance as a suka blat, which means effing bitch. Yeah. If you're asking your banker for money, I suggest you don't go call him a bitch while you're begging for money.
Steve, I heard that, and I'm familiar with that term. I won't bore you why, but I'm familiar with it. It's suka blat is the more extreme version. When they say, Russians and Ukrainians, when they say just suka, apparently, as far as I'm aware and have done for many years, that is a more tamer version.
Right.
I think it's meant to express frustration, but either way, whether you're right or I'm right, either way, it was very unprofessional.
And I don't think J.D. Vance heard. But
no, he didn't. He muttered it under his breath.
I do think that he probably wouldn't have understood. But I do think the Ukrainian ambassador to the U.S. did understand, because that was about the moment she put her face into her hands
head down,
and knew this thing was way off track.
Yeah. OK. Steve Gill, thank you very much for that. Appreciate your time tonight. OK, let's get the thoughts of my panel tonight. Peter Bletchley, Linda Jubilee and Paul Richards. Welcome, you three. Happy Saturday evening to you. Paul, what's your take on all this? Where does this leave Keir Starmer? Because it seems he's in a bit of a tricky position.
It's interesting that after the rumble in the Oval Office, which, as Trump himself said, made great TV, it doesn't get any better the more times you watch it. After that, everyone took to the airwaves and took to social media, but Starmer didn't. What he did was actually make 2 phone calls. One was to Trump and one was to Zelenskyy. And he sees himself now as a sort of middle way between these two now quite, divided parties. And he sees the UK as a bridge between Europe and between the States. And it's interesting that the royal family are now being deployed in Britain's interests in that regard.
Twice. You had the letter.
And now on the state visit as well for Trump too. So, I mean, it's going to be interesting that if Starmer's positioning works, it actually is very good for the UK.
Peter, your thoughts on this charade?
There is so much that we could talk about. We could be here for a very, very long time. But my headline thought is, now is the time for grown-ups. I've seen a lot of knee-jerk reaction, comments that have clearly not been thought through by people at all, and that is not what we, our nation, the Prime Minister, or the world needs right now. It needs maturity, it needs diplomacy, and it needs a lot of very serious thinking. What we know is clearly President Trump is not going to give anything for nothing from here on in, so we have to think very carefully about that. What we also know is that this responsibility for assisting Ukraine might rest on the shoulders of European leaders, their armies, their governments, their taxpayers. It could be a very bumpy road ahead.
Right, off the fence then, Peter. Who was to blame for the clips you saw? Who was in the wrong? Was Zelenskyy being petulant or were Trump and Vance being bullies?
I didn't see any mature behaviour from anybody in that room.
Well, I watched all 50 minutes, and I think the trouble only started 9 minutes from the end. But I would say that the least problematic was Zelenskyy, although he should have had enough sense to keep his mouth shut and not be a trigger point for J.D. Vance, who I regard as the most manipulative person in the room. He clearly, when Zelenskyy opened the door, went in and triggered the whole thing that built momentum with President Trump. Then President Trump started talking, and it was like a juggernaut. He simply couldn't stop.
Can I ask you what you think about the King getting involved twice now? He's meant to be non-political. I know he's probably of any monarch previously the most political monarch we've had, talking about the green projects and saving the world. But twice now, Keir Starmer goes to Washington with a letter saying, look, we've got you a state visit, President Trump, and then tomorrow he's meeting...
I don't think the letter... It's like this. I don't think the letter should have been handed over in public. I thought that was an extremely immature act.
Wasn't it, as well?
It was just stupid. But
I think it was rather good theatre, wasn't it? I think it was rather good.
Clumsy and inept.
I think and Trump loved it.
It should have happened in private. Of course Trump loved it. Why do you think it happened?
He couldn't read the letter, though. That was the scrappy thing. He gave it back.
And you could read the letter. You could read part of the letter, so it was a little bit insecure to have done that kind of thing. But what I mean to say now...
on purpose.
Well, of course, but that's what I mean. It's just childish. Anyway, I think that the King is now involved, and I see your point entirely, Ben, that, the King shouldn't become involved in politics. But let's face it, the one big thing we have here, which is why the letter was so important, is we have soft power. Okay. And in a world now where hard power is taking over, I think that it's incredibly important that this country operates soft power.
OK, all right. Lots of you being very, very political tonight, on the fence, diplomatic. Are you trying to give some tips to the likes of Vance and Zelenskyy and so on? Well done.
They could do with it.
Right, it's the final week to see how you could fare by potentially winning one of our 2 amazing prize bundles in the latest Great British Giveaway. Each one has a brand new iPhone 16, £500 in shopping vouchers and a massive £10,000 in tax-free cash. Hurry, because lines close on Friday.
It's the final week to see how you could be one of 2 big winners in our latest giveaway, as we have 2 prize bundles that have to be won. There's 2 lots of a totally tax-free £10,000 in cash. You'll also receive a brand new iPhone 16, along with £500 in shopping vouchers to spend at your favourite store. Hurry, lines close on the 7th of March. For another chance to win, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. Call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB11 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrants must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 7th of March. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Very good luck to you. Don't go anywhere, because up next...
We do have, of course, a special relationship with our friends in the UK and also with some of our European allies. But we also know that there have been infringements on free speech.
Does the Vice President have a point? And there's new footage that you probably haven't seen of a US reporter asking Donald Trump, with Zelensky sat next to him. Keir Starmer said that the UK was home to free speech. I think he was lying, and President Trump and JD Vance give a response to that. I've got the clip. It's next. Peter Tatchell and Connie Shaw are going head-to-head on whether the UK does truly have free speech. That's next on Ben Leo Tonight, only on GB News.
GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Lee Anderson's Real World, Fridays from 7 p.m.
Getting into medicine at a very early age, you had an interest when you were really, really young, didn't you?
I did. I decided to go to medicine when I was 8. And that was based on the stories my father used to tell me about my grandfather, who I never met, because my grandfather died when he was 11.
Yeah.
And he was in the military, and he was stationed up in the Himalayas, and he was a doctor in the military. And not only did he serve in the military, but he also served his patients. And he served them to the degree where he would go out and he'd take them supplies, and he'd really look after them and make sure that they were not just well, but could live and survive. And it was on a day when he was out there helping his patients. There was a storm up in the Himalayas.
Wow.
And he was out there taking blankets and clothes and food up to them. And on the way back, as he was coming down the Himalayas, there was a landslide which took his Jeep over the edge, and he perished in that. So he gave his life to his service. And it was these stories about my grandfather, what he did and how he helped people, that really inspired me to follow in his footsteps. Not necessarily to go into the military, but to go into medicine.
But he's left a wonderful legacy, because fast forward, you came to this country when you was 4, and you've studied medicine.
Yep.
And you do, we were talking earlier about DNA. You're looking at DNA, looking at people's DNA. You can do profiles on people, predict. Well, you can actually say with some accuracy where they've lived in the past, what jobs they've done, and what medically may happen to them in the future.
Yeah. And I think, over the last, we've been looking at the gene. There was a Human Genome Project last century, which finished.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Headliners on GB News 11 p.m. every night. It's got 3 top comedians going through the next day's newspapers so you don't have to read them, which is great.
It's a good point. He's lying. Maybe he's not lying.
That's Headliners every night from 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. as well on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Ben Leo Tonight, only on GB News. Now, it's been somewhat forgotten due to yesterday's dramatic events in Washington, but buried deep in the full 50-minute chat between Zelensky, Trump and JD Vance was this suggestion from a US reporter that Keir Starmer hadn't been straight with the president about free speech in the UK.
Thank you, Mr. President. Prime Minister Starmer claimed repeatedly that his government believes in free speech and was not engaged in censorship. But his country's government arrests people for memes and thought crimes, and even more worrisome is pressuring American companies to censor Americans on its behalf. How can he be a reliable, trustworthy partner when he says things that are demonstrably false on such an important topic?
Well, we actually spoke to him about that yesterday, and we thought they took it very, very much too far. JD was very strong on it.
We spoke about this in detail with the Prime Minister, the Foreign Secretary, and others at lunch yesterday, and I know that Secretary of Commerce Lutnick followed up in private meetings last night. I do think that under the President's leadership, we're going to find common ground with our friends in the UK on this question, but it remains to be seen.
So what do you think at home? Does the UK have free speech or not? Well, I'm joined now by political commentator Connie Shaw and the human rights campaigner Peter Tatchell. Good evening to you both. Connie, what's your take? I can probably guess your answer, actually, after your treatment at Leeds University. Does the UK have free speech, Connie?
Well, the UK does have freedom of speech. The issue is that our culture has made it so that our laws are not enforced properly, and institutions think that they can get away with punishing people for expressing their legal and perfectly reasonable speech. I mean, I found Keir Starmer's comments absolutely galling to hear, and I'd like to see him say those comments that he's proud of the free speech in this country to the faces of people like Sandy Peggy, to Graham Linehan, to the man who burned the Quran and was then named by Greater Manchester Police and who will probably have a target on his head for the rest of his life. I think his comments were absolutely, I mean, they made me feel sick, quite frankly. I found it absolutely infuriating. Yeah,
good point. Peter, what's your take? Are those Palestinian flags? I can't quite see from the monitor.
Ukrainian and the Palestinian flag.
You've got the full house. Well, look, there's certain...
I'm against all occupations. Freedom for everyone.
Right. OK. Well, look, let's stick on Palestine then. On protests every other weekend, you have the likes of Palestine protesters calling for intifadas and so on for the eradication of Israel. I guess that is free speech, which isn't should be censored or at least picked up by the cops.
People are not saying that.
Oh, they do, Peter. Come on.
I've been on every single protest bar one. I've never heard that once. What I have heard is lots of people calling for a ceasefire to save both Palestinian and Israeli lives. Now, on the broader question of free speech, yes, there are some exceptional abuses, and I condemn those. You know, I defend the right of people who disagree with me to have free speech. I defend the right of people I've defended Christian fundamentalists who have been arrested for preaching their views about homosexuality. I've said they should not be prosecuted. I've opposed their prosecution. I've even offered to defend them in court as a witness. So I'm all in favor of free speech. And I think it's a complete exaggeration and a complete hypocrisy for JD Vance to accuse Keir Starmer and Britain of not having free speech, when in that meeting with the Ukrainian president, both Trump and Vance denied President Zelenskyy his free speech, because every time he tried to speak, he was shouted down, he was talked over, he was bullied. That's a denial of free speech. And we saw that by President Trump and JD Vance. So they are in no position to lecture us about free speech when they wouldn't give President Zelenskyy a chance to speak.
All right, interesting point. I take it you've only seen the 2 or 3 minute clips online, though, not the full 40-minute chat. Connie, what do you make of that? Is that suppressing free speech when you physically interrupt somebody? I mean, it's bad manners, of course. I thought they should have let him speak. But, I mean, is that suppressing free speech?
No, I don't think it is. And it's interesting that you draw that parallel, Peter, because you have been in support of Stonewall for a long time now. And their motto is trans rights are human rights, no debate. So I'd be very interested to know what your perspective is on that, because I don't think that the president...
I am not involved with Stonewall in any way. Please correct that.
Okay, my apologies. But I think that the fact that you have been so stringent in pushing gender ideology, the fact is that it is making people compromise their speech because of this idea that we must accept people's trans identity.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that you can't say that you haven't had any responsibility in pushing this idea that people have to affirm people's declared identity.
OK, let's talk about the trans issue, Peter. Is there anything that I could say now about the trans agenda, the gender ideology, which should make you say, hang on a minute, you're not allowed to say that, there's a problem with that, I'm going to call the police, or I'm going to report you to your boss or something?
So to me, there are 3 red lines on free speech. If you make false, damaging allegation against another person, that they are a paedophile, a rapist, or a tax evader, then that's not free speech. That's an abuse of free speech, which could put those people's lives at risk. If you harass, menace, or otherwise troll people mercilessly, again, that's an abuse of free speech. And particularly if you incite violence or murder, that too is an abuse of free speech. So I don't think those forms of free speech should be allowed, because they intimidate people. They prevent people who are the victims of that from coming out and speaking their mind.
All right.
But I do agree that, people have a right to express a critical, different view on trans issues.
Okay.
That's free speech. I accept that. I've never said anything other. We have to have a conversation.
OK, great stuff. Peter, of course, I disagree with people saying any of those things, but I'm slightly different in that I guess they call people like me free speech absolutists, where I think you should be able to say what you want without being prosecuted or persecuted by the state, no matter how vile it is. Lots of people disagree with me on that. But Peter Tatchell, Connie Shaw, thank you for your company this evening. Very much appreciate it. Coming up, central London is lit up with Ramadan lights. But is it right that we're celebrating Ramadan and not Easter in central London? I'll be debating that next. This is Ben Leo Tonight, only on GB News.
I hope it doesn't rain.
Don't worry about it.
It'll spoil our holiday.
Relax, we're totally covered.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News travel destinations forecast.
The recent showers over the Greek islands are fading away, so turning sunnier here, but we are looking at more wet weather across southern Spain and the Canaries. Through Sunday, there'll be plenty of showers over southern parts of Croatia, and there'll be some heavy showers on the west coast of Italy, Sardinia and Sicily, seeing some showers. Look at this wet weather over southern Spain and feeding down northerly winds, bringing a chill to Madeira, and plenty of showers over the Canaries. They'll continue well into next week. Bye for now.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News travel destinations forecast.
If you want your news to be straight talking... This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again. Down to earth. It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it? And most importantly, honest. Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them. They catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
Now, Egypt has discovered, well, I think it was a British and Egyptian team, actually, finding the historic discovery, the long-lost tomb of King Thutmose II, the last of the lost tombs of the kings of ancient Egypt's 18th dynasty.
Yes, and it's the first royal Egyptian tomb to be discovered since King Tutankhamun's final resting place was found in 1922.
A very exciting discovery, and here to tell us all about it is the historian and author Martin Whittock. Martin, the first royal tomb since Tutankhamun.
Indeed, and identified as King Thutmose II. Other pronunciations are also available. And as you say, it's the last of the lost tombs of Egypt's 18th dynasty. They ruled between about 1550 BC and 1292 BC. It had been known before this tomb since 2022 as Tomb C4, as its occupant was then unknown. But what's happened now is parts of alabaster vessels have been found which have inscriptions bearing the name of Pharaoh Thutmose II and identifying him as the deceased king, along, interestingly, with the name of his wife, Hatshepsut. Now, she's an interesting woman because after he died, she ruled as pharaoh in her own right, one of only 2 women to do so in ancient Egyptian history. Now, the mummy of King Thutmose II was actually discovered during the 19th century at a nearby archaeological site known as Deir el-Bahari Kashet, and it's thought it was moved there after it had been looted by tomb raiders centuries ago. So the tomb is not going to give us the kind of treasures that we associate with Tutankhamun, I'm afraid, but it shows us the architecture of these royal tombs.
GB News, the People's Channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, and as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspective you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Welcome back to Ben Leo Tonight. Now, if you've been doing any shopping in central London recently, you may have noticed that it's been lit up to celebrate Ramadan again, which is now an annual tradition in the capital. And it's the first Western European capital to make the gesture since 2023. There may be nothing wrong with this in itself, but from the fact there's currently no plans to do the same for Easter, for example, and I may remind you that the beginning of Lent is only 4 days away, and this is supposedly a Christian country, the Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, sees absolutely nothing wrong with this saying. At a time when there's so much ignorance and prejudice, we're showing the world that we just don't stand strong enough against hatred. We're also shining a light for hope. Well, I'm joined now by the broadcaster and neurodiversity coach, Fahima Mohammed. Fahima, good evening. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
So what's your take on this? Some people see these Ramadan lights in central London. There was a big opening as well, Sadiq Khan pushing a button and the lights going on, similar to Christmas lights. But the point made is that we don't have this for Easter. So is that fair? What's going on here?
Well, first thing, I think we need to understand that this is actually promoted by a registered charity, the Aziz Foundation, and they pay for it. So it's actually giving back to the community and to bring inclusivity into the streets of London, because the West End is home to that charity, and it's also bringing business into the local area. They have so much affiliation with regards to the community, the restaurants, giving freebies, giving lots of, sort of discounts and things like that. So it's a good thing. And a lot of the times we're always told, especially as a Muslim community, that we're not integrating, but we are inviting other people to see how we celebrate, how we live, and to also share in some of the things that we do, which is normal. There's nothing wrong in sort of having Christmas and Diwali and Hanukkah. They have all of that. So I don't know why there's even some sort of problem with that.
I guess the issue is that at Christmas, and I was down there myself, I did a small report on it, down in London, in Oxford Street, Regent Street, they didn't say Happy Christmas or Merry Christmas. They said Winter Wonder Lights and Holiday Fairy Tale and things like that. And I guess that's where part of the problem. Peter, I'll bring you into this. Do you accept Fahima's explanation there, that it's being inclusive?
Let me try and give some context as to why people have so many concerns about this. In the 1951 census of the UK, 26,000 people identified as Muslim. OK, now that number has grown to about 4 million, whilst the population, the general population, has doubled. So whilst the general population has swollen only by one time itself, the Muslim population in the UK, in my mother's lifetime, has grown by a factor of 180.
Well, sounds like we definitely need some Ramadan lights then.
So that gives concern to people, because it's a faith about which many people don't know anything about.
Well, that's why the conversation will be open about that.
The only time that they experience it in the media is when it's the very worst manifestations, dare I say, an abuse of that faith.
Paul?
So this is why people have their concerns.
Linda first.
Here's what I think. I think, actually, by all means, make the most of Ramadan. So if you're going to complain that actually not enough is made of a Christian festivity, which is the main Christian festivity, it's not Christmas, it is Easter, why don't you just do more about publicising Easter? I'm a Catholic, I'd be very happy with that.
100%.
And if you want to call yourself a Christian nation, do more Christian things.
Yeah, we practice more, we believe more, we have our faith. Is that our problem? And it is a private company who's actually paying for it. Everything that has been put up there for the other faiths, they've been paid for by the taxpayer. This is private.
Why do you think the Christmas lights from Sadiq Khan in London said Happy Holidays, Winter Wonder Lights? Why was there a deliberate
Discuss
exclusion?
it with the organisers.
Yeah,
it should be there. I know a lot of Muslims.
I don't agree with that. That's totally wrong. It's Christmas. In fact, what's wrong is the over-commercialisation of Christmas. Christmas is a fundamentally religious festival, as is Easter.
Come on then, Paul.
That was long gone.
Well, I have to say, I was after the show where we discussed it, I went up and down Oxford Street and all around the West End. I mean, you couldn't move for messages saying Happy Christmas. There were angels displayed all over Oxford Street and Regent Street. I did, and you know, you couldn't miss Christmas.
I don't see anything wrong with any sort of religion having that. It's not a problem. That's why we have these kind of things, so we can celebrate all of it and have these kind of open discussions. If we're having a negative connotation of why Muslims have doubled, why they have all of these, you know, why we're in there, well, now is the time to sort of see another side of it for a change and not criticise it for once.
Get yourself down to a Ramadan celebration.
Let me tell you a few words of warning about Leicester Square. If you go to Leicester Square, which is basically a crime-ridden cesspit...
I go there.
Don't look up. Keep your eyes on your phone, your wallet, your possessions, and be aware of your surroundings. Believe you me, there's a massive crime committed there.
Yeah, don't wear your AP down there or your Rolex that your granny gave you for Christmas, because that will be long gone. OK, look, fascinating discussion. Thank you, Fahima, for joining us. I guess, as I've already said, I guess the concern from some people is that Sadiq Khan pushes every other alternative religion and celebration.
I don't think that's true either. I think he pushes for everything, and it's not him that decides it, nor pays for it either.
But it is him who decides. He's the Mayor of London. He can approve these things.
But even the Mayor of Westminster was there. It's actually the Mayor of Westminster was also there and also, you know, happy to do that. It's just that we report one side of it because we have our own personal prejudice.
Got it. All right, and happy Ramadan to you and your friends and family. Right, coming up, I've been to Runcorn in Cheshire. Beautiful place, lovely people, to find out if they want a by-election in the wake of Mike Amesbury battering a constituent and asking them who would they want to replace the MP. A very scientific poll, not least. This is Ben Leo Tonight, only on GB News.
Good evening. Welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast from the Met Office. Looking ahead to the next few days, it remains largely dry across the south, but further north we will continue to see some further rain from time to time. We still have this weak weather front across the country at the moment, separating the country in two. Still some rain left on it as we move through the course of this evening across northern England, but either side plenty of clear skies. Could see some mist and fog return across parts of East Anglia, southeastern parts of England too, and then later on in the night we could just see some mist and fog also for Northern Ireland and southern Scotland. Under the clearest skies, another cold night, especially in the south, a widespread frost here, temperatures easily falling below freezing. So we start Sunday morning off on a fairly bright note across eastern Scotland, but cloud already beginning to spill back in across northwestern Scotland with an increase in wind here too. Southern Scotland, Northern Ireland, murky start in places with some mist and fog, but that should gradually lift as the day goes on. And for much of England and Wales, a fairly sunny start, and that really is going to continue as we go through the course of the day. It's here where we see the lion's share of the sunshine. Northern England, a little bit more limited with sunshine, with a mix of cloud and sunshine, but really the cloudiest skies will be for parts of Scotland, especially later on as this band of rain just approaches in from the Atlantic. Temperatures on Sunday, very similar to what we saw on Saturday, so highs reaching around 10 to 11 degrees. So in the sunshine, I think feeling pleasant enough for the time of year. A look ahead to Monday, another cold, frosty start in the south, but once again, largely sunny skies here. A band of rain just slowly working its way southeastwards, but weakening as it does so. So by the time it gets to England, very little rainfall left on it. And then behind it, we'll see further showers. And really very little changes middle of the week, largely settled in the south, but further rainfall at times across the north.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
Because
the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Dewbs and Co weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Time now for Leo Unleashed, where I drag my backside out of this studio and travel around the UK to see what life is like in your communities. What's great about where you live, what can be improved, and how is government policy affecting you? And I'll be having plenty of fun along the way too, just like I did when I visited Runcorn, home of disgraced MP Mike Amesbury, who this week had his prison sentence for battering a man in the street suspended. How are his constituents feeling, and who would they vote for if there was a by-election? Let's find out. This week I'm unleashed in the very pretty town of Runcorn in Cheshire, just by the River Mersey, and infamous in recent weeks because it was home to Mike Amesbury, the Labour MP who's just been banged up in prison for 10 weeks for punching a constituent in the face. Who would you vote for in a by-election here, if there was one?
A by-election?
Yeah.
I'd vote for Reform. It's the way he speaks, it's the way he puts it over.
Nigel Farage?
Yeah.
Labour, Reform?
Not Labour after what that Mike's done.
Not Labour?
No.
Were you not impressed with Mike Amesbury?
Not at all.
So who would you vote for if there was another by-election?
That Farage people.
From Reform UK?
Of course.
What do you like about them?
Different from Labour and Conservative.
I only ever have and ever will vote for Labour. No matter who they are, whether they're good or bad, indifference. Labour.
You always vote for Labour?
Always.
Who are you voting for if there's a by-election here in a few weeks?
Reform it'll be, yeah.
Reform?
100%, yeah.
How come? Aren't they?
They're quite lukewarm, though, to be honest with you. I want something...
You want stronger?
Stronger, slightly, not too much, you know what I mean?
Would you vote in a by-election if there was one in a few weeks?
Yeah.
Who for?
Mike.
Mike?
Yeah.
What if he's not standing? Labour again?
Well, yeah.
Even though he smacked someone?
He was defending his family.
OK.
Reform.
You'd vote Reform. How come?
I'd vote Reform because fed up with all the others.
The sun is shining on us.
Good today. Today good, yeah.
Thank the Lord.
Yeah.
Who would you vote for in an election here?
How for here?
Yes.
4 years.
Yes. So you lived here 4 years?
Yeah.
And who would you vote for here? Labour? Conservative?
Labour, yeah.
You'd vote Labour?
Yeah. If I had a choice, I wouldn't vote for anyone.
How come?
The old aren't they?
Oh. Would you vote for Labour again here?
I don't vote for Labour.
No? Who did you vote for last time? Do you mind me asking?
I haven't voted for years.
There's only one party.
Yes.
Nigel Farage.
Ooh, Reform UK.
Yeah.
Some people down this high street have said Reform are a bit bigoted or racist.
No.
What do you say to those people?
He's the only one who wants to do anything for British people in their own country.
Why the Lib Dems? What is it about the Lib Dems that you like?
Well, I just feel that I particularly like the leader of the Lib Dems.
So Ed Davey?
Yes, I do. I think what he says is very interesting and very honest.
Can I be a bit cheeky?
Mm-hmm.
Ed Davey thinks women can have, you know what? What do you think about that?
You know what?
Penises. Ed
Well,
Davey thinks women can have penises.
That's entirely up to him, isn't it?
Doesn't put you off him?
No, not at all.
Nobody at the moment.
Don't like any of them?
No.
Oh, no. Why don't you like them?
You can get in if you want to.
Me?
Yeah.
I live very far away. I'd like to live up here, though.
Would you?
Would you look after me?
Yes, so definitely.
Where would you recommend for lunch? Where would you take me for lunch?
There, the Devonshire.
Come on then, should we go?
No, we've just been.
No. You said you look after me. All right, let's get the reaction now from Peter Blexley, Linda Jubilee and Paul Richards. Very scientific and accurate polling going on there. YouGov, eat your heart out. Interestingly, none for Conservatives, despite getting a hefty haul, Linda, at the last election.
But Reform were second in that constituency, I think.
They were. So, yeah, Reform was second. What did you make of that? I mean, Labour, anything to worry about?
I think that Reform stand a pretty good chance of getting in that constituency. In fact, Paul and I were on the night that the video came out with Mike Amesbury when he was... do you remember when he lamped the person?
Yeah.
It was just so incredible. But I do think, you know, there is a big... What Reform has to do is actually really, really ramp up on its vetting for its recruits.
Yeah.
If it does that, because it needs to do it before the May elections anyway, if it's going to get any significant movement forward. But I think in this particular constituency, provided there's a by-election, I think Reform could do very well.
Yeah, Peter, they need to make sure there's no repeat of UKIP, the swivel-eyed loons, as David Cameron used to call them.
And that requires a lot of vetting, which requires a lot of open source intelligence work being done on people. In other words, checking their background online.
PIs?
You'd be astonished what's out there. People that have got open source intelligence skills, people sit at their laptops. It's frightening what they can find out about you if they've got the right tools and they know where to look. So all of those kind of background searches need to be very, very thorough, because they don't want to get saddled with people that turn out to be a chronic embarrassment.
Paul, as the Labour contingent on the panel, are you concerned about Runcorn?
Well, it's a by-election we didn't want, obviously. I think it is there for Farage to lose. I think it's one of those sort of potential big, explosive by-election excitements that you get in mid-term with an unpopular government. I would have said definitely a slam dunk for reform up until this week, actually, but a lot of the defence stuff this week and the sort of patriotic stuff coming out of Starmer might help some of those voters stay in the Labour column. But I think right now, I reckon I'm going to call it for Farage.
But, Paul, it's not mid-term, is it? We're only about 8 months in.
Well, good point, yeah. Good point.
You just to clarify, you think Reform will win Runcorn if there's a by-election?
I think that's a very strong likelihood that they will pull off one of those amazing by-elections, because they won't keep it in the general election, but I think it's a possible, mid-term sort of phenomenon where the government gets a kicking.
As I understand it, the Reform were campaigning, I think the day after Mike Amesbury was arrested for battering a constituent. They were knocking doors.
Absolutely. Because it's wide open for them. Yeah, of course.
Where would that leave Keir Starmer then and the government? How would they react? How would they be feeling, do you think, if they lost that?
You tell us, Paul, because I think it would be a disastrous sign for Labour.
Well, I mean, the events have moved on since the general election in terms of why there's a by-election. Yeah, but I mean, it's also the first time where the MP has battered somebody in the street, isn't it? So, it is an unusual set of circumstances.
And on that note, his sentence shouldn't have been suspended and he should have got longer. What kind of deterrent does that pose?
Whilst I've got you, our very loyal member, Lady of the House, very loyal viewer, thank you, Lady of the House, says, hi, Ben, ask Peter if he borrowed his jacket off Brian Ferry.
That's a compliment.
Isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's a compliment.
That is a compliment.
Love is the drug.
That is one of the smartest and most elegant men I've ever encountered.
And so's Brian Ferry.
Yeah, and so are you.
Somebody else on the emails, Peter, said they want you for London Mayor for Reform. What do you make of that?
London Mayor, goodness me. I would have run for Police and Crime Commissioner in London if it weren't coupled with the job of London Mayor. Yeah. Because I couldn't. I would very much like to have played a part in knocking the Metropolitan Police back.
Interesting. All right. Well, thank you to the people of Runcorn for welcoming me. You were very hospitable and lovely, and those old ladies at the end were very gracious and, good fun. So thank you, guys. Appreciate it. Some breaking news in the papers coming up in just a minute. Keir Starmer has tonight urged Volodymyr Zelenskyy to patch things up with Donald Trump and return to the White House. The PM's also had a call with Donald Trump after the meeting with the Ukrainian leader earlier today. All the papers, big stories coming up in just a minute. This is Ben Leo Tonight, only on GB News. Now your weather.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good evening. Welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast from the Met Office. Looking ahead to the next few days, it remains largely dry across the south, but further north we will continue to see some further rain from time to time. We still have this weak weather front across the country at the moment, separating the country in two. Still some rain left on it as we move through the course of this evening across northern England, but either side plenty of clear skies. Could see some mist and fog return across parts of East Anglia, southeastern parts of England too, and then later on in the night we could just see some mist and fog also for Northern Ireland and southern Scotland. Under the clearest skies, another cold night, especially in the south, a widespread frost here, temperatures easily falling below freezing. So we start Sunday morning off on a fairly bright note across eastern Scotland, but cloud already beginning to spill back in across northwestern Scotland with an increase in wind here too. Southern Scotland, Northern Ireland, murky start in places with some mist and fog, but that should gradually lift as the day goes on. And for much of England and Wales, a fairly sunny start, and that really is going to continue as we go through the course of the day. It's here where we see the lion's share of the sunshine. Northern England, a little bit more limited with sunshine, with a mix of cloud and sunshine, but really the cloudiest skies will be for parts of Scotland, especially later on as this band of rain just approaches in from the Atlantic. Temperatures on Sunday very similar to what we saw on Saturday, so highs reaching around 10 to 11 degrees. So in the sunshine, I think feeling pleasant enough for the time of year. A look ahead to Monday, another cold, frosty start in the south, but once again, largely sunny skies here. A band of rain just slowly working its way southeastwards, but weakening as it does so. So by the time it gets to England, very little rainfall left on it, and then behind it we'll see further showers. And really very little changes middle of the week, largely settled in the south, but further rainfall at times across the north.
Despite the morning rain, it'll be a nice, warm, cosy day ahead. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
It's the final week to see how you could be one of 2 big winners in our latest giveaway, as we have 2 prize bundles that have to be won. There's 2 lots of a totally tax-free £10,000 in cash. You'll also receive a brand new iPhone 16, along with £500 in shopping vouchers to spend at your favourite store. Hurry, lines close on the 7th of March. For another chance to win, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus 1 standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. Call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB11 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrants must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 7th of March. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
Good morning. Are you all right?
I am all right. All the better for seeing you, my friend.
John, you've been through so much. We've just heard there about you losing your wife and losing your daughter. I'm so sorry to hear about both of those things. And despite all of that and everything you've been through, you continue to just give back. How can you do that? Just take something so negative and turn it into something so positive?
Well, Sheffield is the finest city in England. That's what I think about the Sheffield people and everybody. 250,000 I set out. I beat that. I got that. Just what's got in bucket. So I thought, well, set go ports a bit, are you? So we over 500. And we got that. And I thought, well, why not go say for 1 million? And we got $1 million. This is what I think about my people of Sheffield. It's just entitled my city. Sheffield, my city, that will always be home to me, no matter where I go or whatever sights I will see. Wherever I return, church bells will peal as I come home to the city of steel. A cathedral, cinemas, museums, Sheffield has such beautiful places. Home to a host of people of so many races, living and working in perfect harmony. That's why Sheffield is the greatest place to be. Singing the praises of Sheffield, Sheffield, my Sheffield, as I go forth. For now we are the sporting city of the north. Wonderful people, so happy, so helpful, so kind. Sheffield, no better place you will find.
GB News, the People's Channel.
It's 10 p.m. I'm Ben Leo, and breaking tonight, more money for Ukraine. In tomorrow's Sunday Times, the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, has signed a £2.26 billion UK-Ukraine loan agreement, marking the first time money generated from frozen Russian assets will be used for military purposes. Elsewhere, the man who was punched by Mike Amesbury says he could have killed him and deserves to be in prison. He's done a sit-down interview exclusive in The Sun on Sunday. More on that in just a second. And in The Observer, they're reporting that Zelenskyy is due to receive a royal welcome after his ear-bashing from President Trump. And there's breaking reports tonight as well that Sir Keir Starmer has told Volodymyr Zelensky to patch things up with Donald Trump. And there may be, we'll clarify soon, there may have even been a plea to Donald Trump himself to sort this situation out. Joining me this evening on the panel to go through all the big tomorrow's newspapers, former Met Police Detective Peter Bleksley, journalist and comms advisor Linda Jubilee, and the former Labour Special Advisor Paul Richards. Big hour coming up, but first let's get your news headlines with Sophie Reaper.
A very good evening to you. The time is just after 10 o'clock and these are your latest headlines. Earlier on today, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky arrived at Downing Street for a meeting with Sir Keir Starmer. The British PM was there to greet President Zelensky as the pair shook hands outside number 10 before entering to begin their bilateral meeting. Since then, President Zelensky has posted to his Telegram account to say the talk was important and warm and that they discussed, quote, concrete steps to strengthen Ukraine's position. We now also understand that following the meeting with President Zelensky, Sir Keir Starmer has now spoken with US President Donald Trump and French President Emmanuel Macron. Meanwhile, Conservative leader Kemi Badenoch has said that Volodymyr Zelensky is a hero, adding she was entirely behind the government's support for Ukraine.
I thought it was quite an extraordinary press conference, and we all need to remember that President Zelensky is a hero. He represents the Ukrainian people's strength and their resistance to an authoritarian regime that is trying to destroy them. He needs all of the support that he can get. And I think that it is inappropriate to conduct that kind of disagreement in front of cameras. The only person who benefits from that is President Putin.
Now, of course, Volodymyr Zelensky's arrival in the UK follows his brief meeting in the White House yesterday, in which talks with Donald Trump descended into a row. The Ukrainian president travelled to Washington, D.C. as he attempted to secure a ceasefire agreement with Russia and a possible mineral deal with the US. However, the visit ended prematurely, with the signing of an agreement and a joint press conference cancelled following the clash. Elsewhere, in their most recent update this evening, the Vatican says the Pope remains in a stable condition. That's after suffering an isolated breathing crisis. They also said that Pope Francis is receiving alternating treatments to help him breathe as he continues to battle double pneumonia, but they added that he remains alert and oriented. The Pope was admitted to Rome's Gemelli Hospital on the 14th of February with a severe respiratory infection that triggered other complications. And the Met Police has said farmers could be arrested if they drive their tractors at a march in central London that's scheduled for Tuesday of next week. Organisers have said the so-called Pancake Day rally is aiming to be bigger and better than the previous two demonstrations as their campaign against changes to inheritance tax rules continues. But now conditions have been imposed under the Public Order Act, preventing demonstrators from bringing tractors other than a limited number already agreed by the organisers. Those are your latest GB News headlines. For now, back to Ben Leo.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you, Sophie. The first of tomorrow's newspaper front pages have just dropped. Let's start with The Observer. Royal welcome for Zelensky after White House meltdown. What a week for the Ukrainian leader. Whether you like him or not, he went to the White House, had a scrap with the President and Vice President, flew to London today to be embraced by Keir Starmer, and tomorrow he gets a warm welcome at Sandringham, the home of the King. King Charles going to welcome him to offer his support. The Sunday Mirror, two great stories on the front here. First of all, Starmer welcomes Zelensky. We've got your back, reads the headline. And this comes off the back, of course, of Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor, announcing that she's going to be giving a pretty much £2.5 billion loan to Ukraine for their military effort, which is going to come from frozen Russian assets in the UK. £18 billion worth, apparently, up for grabs. So if Ukraine does need more, there's plenty more of Russian assets to go after. And just in the top here, this is a really good story. Ghislaine Maxwell is to ask pal Donald Trump for a pardon. So, of course, Ghislaine, the Jeffrey Epstein associate, who I think she's on a life sentence in America for her involvement in the Epstein situation. Apparently, she's going to ask the president for a pardon. Remains to be seen if he will oblige. I think not. The I weekend, the shouting match in the Oval Office. Trump tries to humiliate Zelenskyy live on TV. And the Independent, King Charles shows solidarity with Zelenskyy. Welcome back, panel. Peter, Linda, Paul. Should we take a look at the Sunday Mirror? Seems to be the best of this lot at the moment. Two good stories on the front. Let's start with Rachel Reeves and this loan. She signed it tonight at number 11. Zelenskyy was there. Keir Starmer was there. They signed this loan agreement. Linda, £2.5 billion, money that's come from frozen Russian assets. Is this good timing, bearing in mind what just happened in the United States?
Well, I must say it makes perfect logical sense to use Russian assets in this way. The issue is, what kind of repercussions will it have internationally? That's what we need to be asking ourselves. I don't know. I think it could present serious problems because there's Chinese assets all over the place. There's Russian assets. You know, you might set a precedent.
What are you scared of? What are you scared of?
Well, I'm saying that it could create a bad precedent. I think it's a difficult thing to actually seize assets, and once you've done that, you kind of open the floodgates.
Yeah, but a number of Russian oligarchs and prominent people that have been associates of Vladimir Putin have been sanctioned for years over here, for many, many years, and these assets have just been sitting in banks doing nothing, essentially. So if this is an effort by Starmer and Rachel Reeves to show to other European nations who might have sequestrated and seized assets that this is what we're going to do, follow our lead, then OK, well and good, but they'll need a lot more money because in terms of being a war chest, £2.5 billion is a mere drop in the
it won't go
ocean.
very far, but I'm not just talking about the signal it sends to other people. I'm talking about when there are other international assets around, you've got to be quite careful about how far you go down.
Yeah, we had Steve Gill on at the top of the show, the former advisor to Bill Clinton, who said that this is pretty unprecedented going after. He made the claim, Paul, that there was more European assets in Russia.
Well, when he said that, I was shaking my head. I think that's wrong. I agree with Peter. This sets a really good precedent, actually, and I think it's it's gutsy stuff from Rachel, but it's the right move. This money is kleptocrats' money that is in London, but, you know, it's been scribbled away. These are friends of Putin, so it's not that they're private individuals.
How did it end up here, by the way?
Well, because
London used to be known as the money laundering capital as well. Who's responsible for that?
Well, that's the international financial regime has been terrible in terms of people being able to squirrel away money in London in particular. But, you know, this should send that signal to other European countries. Also, she's announced, by the way, she's rediverting money away from the National Wealth Fund that was heading to green schemes. Into the arms industry. So we're going to spend more money on our own defence as well.
So that's interesting, isn't it? Is that deliberate to try and pander to, I say, the likes of reform voters? Because we had this week, or was it last week, we had the redirection of money to defence spending from foreign aid. And now they're doing the same thing with green projects. So they're shunning foreign aid, they're shunning green projects.
I don't think it's sort of political small p, because I think it is about the national defence and the future of the world. And if America is going to withdraw, then somebody has to fill the void. But it does play very well with those voters who might otherwise think about voting for reform.
What does it do, though? What sort of signal do you think this sends to Trump? I mean, I'm not saying...
that's what I want to know.
That's the key issue here.
I think he admires strength, doesn't he? I think if we show ourselves to be strong...
But Donald Trump is there in the Oval Office yesterday. He's trying to get this war finished with a deal. He's trying to stop people dying. And at the same time, as Keir Starmer scurries back to London, we're now throwing loads more money to continue the war effort. There's no cohesion there.
Donald Trump's version of finishing this war will inevitably involve a degree of compromise by Vladimir Zelenskyy. That's absolutely guaranteed. They are not going to get all their land back. That just isn't going to happen.
And what's the signal for that? Is that you can get away with it,
let's just remember that 6 weeks ago, 2 months ago, nobody was talking about potential ceasefires, peace deals, stopping this war. None of our weak, pathetic politicians in Europe were not talking like this. And wouldn't it be a crying shame if after 3 years of heroic efforts on the battlefield by the Ukrainians that they lost the war in the Oval Office of the White House?
Yeah.
The second time tonight I've agreed with Peter, but that's exactly right. And what do you do if bullies keep coming for you and you give in? What do? They keep coming, don't they? So what's next? Moldova, Estonia, you know, it doesn't...
This is when the Europeans have got to step up.
Correct.
And we'll probably get a European army out.
So it's not actually a peace deal at all, is it? It just stores up trouble down the line.
Should we look at this other story on the front of the Sunday Mirror, the top right-hand side of your screen there? Ghislaine Maxwell is to ask pal, as they describe him, Donald Trump, for a pardon. She is, of course, spending her life in prison in the US for her involvement in the Jeffrey Epstein scandal, Linda.
That's right, but so she does. She is obviously Jeffrey Epstein's girlfriend, who was Donald Trump's friend. Now, that's all too cosy, really, for my liking. The fact of the matter is this: there's a comparison here, you could say, with the Tate brothers, who were extradited back to America this week. But the Tate brothers weren't convicted, as far as I know. They were only accused of crimes.
They've never been convicted of a crime in their life.
She has been convicted and sentenced to life imprisonment for pimping young girls.
She's a filthy, sex-offending nonce. Let her rot.
Oh, OK.
I've just been told, apparently, Peter, that word...
We don't use it.
I apologise.
Well, no, I fell foul to that last week. Apparently, it's in the strictest category of Ofcom language.
Filthy, or the other one?
Yeah, you know.
The other one.
Don't repeat it. I don't want to place of apologies.
Forgive me, I'm very sorry, everybody.
So Maxwell got 20 years, actually, not life, for pimping underage girls for Jeffrey Epstein.
I mean, surely, even for Trump, this would be a step too far, wouldn't it? No, it's not going to happen.
I mean, that was a catastrophic... If you ever watched any of the documentaries, there were droves of these young girls down at Epstein's holiday home in Palm Beach.
Absolutely awful.
And they were all being shipped up and used as slave labour, used as sex labour.
Abused, exploited.
You simply couldn't countenance it, but letting her out, could you?
Peter, how long do you think she should have got, if not... I mean, she got 20 years, Ghislaine Maxwell.
Well, if she serves 20, that would be a result, and it's more likely to happen out there in American prison than it would over here. She'd probably only serve half of that. Again, for the depravity of her offending, I believe deserved a far stiffer sentence, but she was convicted 20 years. Let's hope she does every single day.
So apparently, according to the Sunday Mirror, the idea of a pardon for Ghislaine Maxwell was initially floated by a fellow inmate inside the Florida prison where she's being held, but has since been embraced by her friends and family. One source said, given how many pardons Trump has issued in recent weeks since being back in power, those in Ghislaine's clique joked she should push for one. Donald Trump, of course, one guy that I am a big fan of, Russ Ulbricht, he founded the Silk Road website. He was given 2 life sentences plus 40 years with no parole just for starting a website. He admits he made a mistake. Anyway, Trump finally pardoned him, so that's one example. But you have to say, for the risk-reward, Linda, you're a comms advisor, you're a comms expert. The risk-reward of pardoning Ghislaine Maxwell...
There's no reward.
There's no reward.
In pardoning her.
No.
And let's remember there's an ongoing story with regards to the Trump administration here.
Yes.
He's promised to release all the Epstein files, and apparently they are not all being delivered as requested.
It's like you've seen the rundown to this show, Peter, because in the next 20 or 30 minutes I'm going to be discussing that. We have a clip from the Attorney General of the United States boasting about how the Epstein files are about to be released. Anyway, it was a massive joke. They were released probably partially, is being very generous, the next day. Anyway, I'm not going to spoil it for you, but we'll get into that in the next section of the show. Right, so we move on very briefly. It's the final week to see how you could win one of 2 amazing prize bundles in our latest giveaway. Each one has a brand new iPhone 16, 500 quid in shopping vouchers and a whopping £10,000 in tax-free cash. Hurry, because lines close on Friday.
It's the final week to see how you could be one of 2 big winners in our latest giveaway, as we have 2 prize bundles that have to be won. There's 2 lots of a totally tax-free £10,000 in cash. You'll also receive a brand new iPhone 16, along with £500 in shopping vouchers to spend at your favourite store. Hurry, lines close on the 7th of March. For another chance to win, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus 1 standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. Call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB11 PO Box 869 690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 7th of March. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Stay with us. More front pages will be coming very shortly, including, I'm hearing from the press gods, a very big story on the front of the Mail on Sunday. The editor-at-large of that very paper, Charlotte Griffiths, will be here with us in just a sec. This is Ben Leo Tonight, only on GB News.
If you want your news to be straight talking, this is a nightmare for the Conservatives. Again, down to earth. It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it? And most importantly, honest. Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them. Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, and as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Martin Daubney, weekdays from 3 p.m.
Sadly, on the 18th of December last year, I was 9:20 in the morning in London on Woolwich Manor Way, going about my business to deliver something to someone, and I heard a banging on my car door. The handle was being rattled, but I locked my door in London, Martin, and the next thing I knew was a fist with something metal just punched through the driver's window into my face and knocked me over to the passenger seat. I had a wonderful angel called Bobby, who was my witness, who saw it happen. We got to hospital in Essex. They couldn't deal with it because it was a bad injury, and I ended up in Moorfields Hospital on the 19th. My lovely wife was incredible. I had an operation, and currently, as I sit opposite you, I have 6 stitches holding my eyeball together, and I've got at least 3 more operations to hopefully get my sight back.
Now, the astonishing thing about this is, it was just a random act from some nutter. It's changed your life forever. At the moment, you can't see. No. Your cornea is dislodged. You need to go undergo major eye surgery. But, Mike, a lot of people will be saying the obvious thing. Why has nobody been nicked? Well, I know Woolwich, right? You can't drive through Woolwich without getting a ticket for Ulez, right? The geezer was in a van or a car?
He was in a dark van, and I unfortunately wasn't able to take a photograph of the reg plate.
There's got to be CCTV there.
There's got to be CCTV there, and all I can say is that I do feel let down because it's GBH, it's not just stealing a handbag, not that that's making, a small issue of that. That's bad enough. But being GBH, they dropped the case after 3 weeks.
GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Welcome back to Ben Leo Tonight. More front pages have just dropped, including a big one, Bobby Belter, as we call it. Let's start with The Observer, though, first. The headline reads, Royal welcome for Zelenskyy after White House meltdown. Keir Starmer, it was a stark contrast, wasn't it, to the chaos in the Oval Office yesterday. JD Vance and Trump absolutely berating Zelenskyy. Meanwhile, in Downing Street, there was hugs, pattings on the back, and I think they went off for a nice posh dinner somewhere as well. The Sunday Telegraph, you are very welcome to number 10, says Keir Starmer. He also said, by the way, I'm going to say this now, he also said that Zelenskyy, to his face, that he has support of everybody across Britain. I don't know who he's speaking for, because Labour won, what was it, Paul, what percent of the vote? 30-something% of the vote? Less than Jeremy Corbyn. So I don't know why the Prime Minister thinks he can talk on behalf of all Britons, because I'm sure there are some who disagree with
the majority, though, to be fair.
The majority?
The majority.
What, lower vote share than Corbyn is the majority, is it? I rest my case. We move on to the Sunday Times. Rachel Reeves unlocks billions for Kyiv and UK defence. We did just discuss that. Tonight she has announced a loan deal with Ukraine, signing £2.5 billion, just under, worth of loans to Ukraine for the military effort. It's coming, interestingly, from frozen Russian assets in the UK and the diversion of funds towards green projects in the UK. And here's the big one. The Mail on Sunday. Now stop the state's visits for bully, quote-unquote, Trump. Amid the outrage over the US president's humiliation of Zelensky, and as the King hosts Ukraine leader at Sandringham today, Sunday, MPs and top brass demand the state visit offered to Donald Trump this week by Prime Minister Keir Starmer should be rescinded. Top MPs and military brass are calling for it to be taken away. Charlotte Griffiths, who is the editor-at-large of the Mail on Sunday, joins us in the studio now. Charlotte, good evening. Good story. Surprising.
Yeah, quite surprising.
From your lot.
But in the way, possibly from my lot, it's quite surprising. But it also is completely logical, because how can he meet Zelensky today and then go to? He's supposed to be meeting him in Balmoral in Scotland for a pre-state visit get-together,
right,
and then again for another state visit. So it would be completely unfair to require this of the King, because he's being asked to switch his allegiance. We know privately that he really does support Ukraine, and he's spoken about it in the past. It makes no sense. He's going to have to stall for time on this one.
So the top brass include former Defence Minister Tobias Ellwood, Linda, Dickie Arbiter, who was a spokesman for the late Queen. Dickie's a very good top royal commentator. I think Dickie's daughter works in the US.
She does. She works for CBS, I think.
Yeah.
It's one of the American networks.
And ex-MI6 head Richard Dearlove. They've all said that Trump's state visit to the UK should be rescinded, Linda.
Oh, I don't know whether it will be rescinded, but Charlotte's right. They have to put some distance here. It will have to.
But it says here, Donald Trump's state visit to Britain should be shelved in the wake of his astonishing White House tirade against Zelensky.
I just don't think it will be shelved. I do think it will be delayed.
There'll never be a moment where the King comes out and says, you know, this has been shelved. Of course, they'll just bury it. They'll kick it into the long grass. But I think what Alicia Kern said is right, which is it's not about currying favour. State visits are for allies, you know, that we've had a long tradition of working with, not to sort of do favours for one another.
Yeah, and the USA is an ally that we've had a very long relationship with. Anybody remember World War II, for example? This is typical of the easily offended acting so immaturely, dangerously and stupidly. Earlier on, I asked for grown-ups to be mature, to take a deep breath, not to knee-jerk react to any of this. And what have we got?
We've got Tobias.
Stop the visit.
Yeah.
Pathetic.
We've got Tobias Ellwood, Richard Dearlove and Dickie Arbiter, Paul Richards, all saying, no, Donald Trump, you are not having a state visit, or at least you shouldn't have one.
I know lots and lots of people who'll be really uneasy about Trump coming. There'll be demonstrations. We might get that enormous blimp last time I was on them, and I might be outside
Hang on, you
this time
protested against Trump last time?
Yes, but...
Why did you do that?
Well, because I don't like him as a politician, but I think the state visit should go ahead because, as Peter says, they are our ally. So I don't think this question of banning it is a good one.
I don't think they could possibly.
And he should meet the King.
State visit.
Yeah. No, it's not happening.
Having gone in for this whole performance with envelope, press conference in the Oval, that would look totally ridiculous as far as our monarchy is concerned.
Sources close to Trump are saying it would be very inadvisable and unwise, which is true. I mean, it would be very damaging.
No, we need to put out the red carpet, I'm afraid. That is the reality.
But I think it could be delayed, and I think it should be delayed. And there are numerous reasons why it could legitimately be delayed as well, because the King's, you know, not very well. He's got a gruelling schedule.
And
the last thing he needs is to get wrapped up in all this.
The Queen not being very well too. I mean, she has been a little bit.
She's been working non-stop. I wouldn't blame her if she needs.
And you could space it out, because the Balmoral trip is really a planning trip for the state visit. State visits require a lot of planning, so this could all be spun out over several months, I think, which might help matters.
The bottom line is 3 blokes had a bit of a tear-up in Washington. And that nothing changes nothing. The peace will not be won, negotiated all obtained in the Russia versus Ukraine conflict without the input of the United States. Wake up and grow up, everybody. It was a spat.
Yeah, lots of our viewers tonight, Peter, on your say, applauding you and backing you in your sentiment there. Let me just read you some more colour from this front page story from the Mail on Sunday tomorrow. No date, as Charlotte, you've alluded to, has been set yet for the state visit, but many sources saying it should be put off or at least delayed. Tobias Ellwood, the former Defence Minister, Conservative, he said it would be inappropriate to place the King in the position of hosting the President if US foreign policy shifts away from its long-standing support for Ukraine and toward alignment with Russia's security objectives. Can I just add, I quite like Tobias Ellwood, he's a friendly guy, but he is the one who also did a Taliban, was it a Taliban?
Yeah.
Tourism video or something. So I'm not sure how much weight his comments there carry. Dickie Arbiter, who was a spokesman for the late Queen, as we've already said, he said, it's difficult to rescind an invitation to an alleged ally of Britain. Charlotte, as you've said, I feel the only option is to stall until such time the government feels it's right. And the ex-MI6 head, Richard Dearlove, has said, they don't have to arrange the state visit straight away. They have to let the dust settle. Trump is that enamoured by the royal family, there's an opportunity to try and rebuild bridges.
Yeah.
The other thing to think of is the King. What does the King actually think? We know he's a big supporter of Ukraine. It's just, it's not very fair on him.
Do you see any problem?
That's the job, though, I'm afraid. You know, if you are the head of state, that's the job you've got to do, whether you like them or not.
He's been passed around like a puppet. 1 minute he's in Sandringham with Zelenskyy, then he's off to Balmoral.
That's why we pay him.
Charlotte, do you see
Well, if he wants to quit the job, I'll do it.
Well, he probably deserves a rest every now and again, but he doesn't allow himself to have one. He works very hard for his money.
Peter, don't give our viewers any ideas. They'll probably support that in their drone. Charlotte, just finally, very quickly, 30 seconds. Do you see any problem in the way the King is getting involved in... I mean, A, with this letter, I know the government orders it. Now the visit tomorrow with Zelenskyy. Is there any issue there about creeping into politics?
Well, I think he has in the past spoken out about Ukraine, and we know he has strong opinions, and he used to send out his famous spider letters, but he's obviously, since becoming the monarch, had to wind that down. But we kind of do know, unlike the Queen, the late Queen, we do know his private opinions and his private leaning.
Because it was a lot longer before he came to the throne.
Yeah.
So there's a whole history before, as you mentioned, the spider letters. Yeah. There was tons of stuff about carbuncles on the London skyline, etc., and his views on architecture. And we've built an ambient knowledge of what he thinks, whereas we didn't have it with the Queen.
So we can kind of guess where he falls on the Trump, pro-Trump, anti-Trump debate. Even though he can never say he's not a big fan of Trump's, I'm pretty sure he would have watched those clips like the rest of us and been pretty annoyed. You can just guess that about him, can't you?
Interesting. Great story on the front of your paper, Charlotte. More papers coming up, including a really interesting story in the Sunday Times. Apparently, young women now, specifically, are consistently earning more than men. So I guess the gender pay gap really is alive and well. But it's just been reversed, of course. This is Ben Leo tonight, only on GB News.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, Will, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Well, joining us in the studio now is Chia Eaglin and Erin Cobb from Clark's Farm Greyhound Rescue, who have brought along two very special guests. This is Duchess.
So Duchess is the one I'm stroking. This is Duchess, isn't it? Our lady joining us this morning, and then over there is Vieira.
Vieira's a chap, isn't he? And Duchess is a lady. So,
talk to us about their history. Now, they used to be racing dogs, didn't they? But now they're looking for a home.
Yeah, so both of these dogs were racing greyhounds. They have retired recently. So now we are getting them ready and prepared to go into a forever home, essentially.
So anyone watching, make sure you get on the Clark's Farm website later on today, because these guys are up for adoption. And I mean...
And they are very cute.
Look how well behaved they are as well. They were a little bit excited when they came in, because it's their first time on TV, and they wanted to make a good impression.
They did.
Now
She's tired. Now they're both looking, aren't they? They know what's up on
yawning already.
Here. Now, talk to us about greyhounds as a breed. If anyone was going to adopt a greyhound, what would they expect?
I'd say the first thing is couch potatoes. They are the most lazy dog ever.
Really? You wouldn't expect that because of the background.
Everyone has this massive misconception that they need loads of exercise, loads of walks, but they are actually, you know, quite happy with 2 20-minute walks a day. They are
Really?
so laid back.
Yeah. Easy.
That's
as long as they're able to have their moments of madness, zoomies, you know, they do get the sillies, of course. But once they've had that, they are so happy to just chill out on the sofa with you. Usually,
they've all got different personalities. And it's just great to see, even though some of them...
Dutch's just perched on the back of your head.
Dutch is going to fall asleep. You're on TV, Dutch.
She's watching.
GB News, the People's Channel.
It's Patrick Christys tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christys tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Ben Leo tonight. Let's take a look at the front page of the Sunday Times again. Some more good stories on there, including this one, which I just talked about before the break. Boys are losing out in the gender pay gap. Young women are now consistently earning more than their male counterparts for the first time. That's according to a report that warns of a social crisis gripping young men. Women and girls aged 16 to 24 in both white-collar and blue-collar jobs make nearly 10% more on average than their male peers. That's according to the Centre for Social Justice think tank. So just to reiterate, women and girls aged 16 to 24 are making nearly 10% more on average, Linda, than their male peers.
Well, off the top of my head, I think the figures would support the fact that in recent years, girls have been getting better academic grades, consistently better than boys. So it would seem logical that the flow-through would be that they were able to get better jobs. But it kind of does worry me. I mean, I've got one daughter and 2 sons, and it it worries me that young boys now do seem to be falling a bit behind.
Well,
I don't know what you do about it.
Can I say, for
Girls
years...
are more popular on OnlyFans as well, and they can pay plenty of money on that.
Peter.
They do. Many young women make a lot of money on that.
Yeah, but I think that's completely deplorable.
For years and years, there have been 2 #1 schools in the country, St Paul's Girls and St Paul's Boys. And for years, St Paul's Girls has done better than St Paul's Boys. So
do you know the deputy...
They must work harder.
And the headmistress of St Paul's Girls, I know this for a particular reason, has just become, or not just become, but 2 or 3 years ago became the deputy head of Eton. The first time in 600 years a woman has held that post.
Ah, interesting.
So we do know that girls are doing very, very well. My daughter's school, you know, was absolutely fantastic. I remember the first day I arrived, she was 11 years old, the headmistress standing at the gate, and it's the entrance exam time. And she said, we're educating the super women of the future.
Oh, very good. Well, can I read you a line from this report? It says, boys and young men are in crisis. Whilst the last 100 years have been marked by great leaps forward in outcomes and rights for women, in this generation, it's boys who are being left behind, and by some margin. From the day they start primary school to the day they leave higher education, the progress of boys lags behind girls, Paul.
Well, there is a crisis of masculinity, and the report is from the Centre of Social Justice, which is Ian Duncan Smith's outfit, and they have had some interesting things to say, even though they're on the right, over the last few years. And I think they're pointing to a genuine problem, which is that, you know, young men went through COVID. They are now facing, as you say, a gap in their pay. We don't have enough apprenticeships and things like that get people into the world of work. And they're having a crisis of identity about who they are and what they're for.
Why do you think this happens to boys, though? And
I'll tell you what.
I'm the father of 3 boys.
Go on, then.
And none of them have got a crisis of identity. I'm not claiming the credit for that. It's probably down to their mother. But I think there's... You know, I don't kind of get it. There are still activities for boys. It's not like the whole manlyhood is being eroded.
Where are the youth clubs? Where are the routes in? You were telling me in the green room, you know, coppers all now have to have degrees now, so those routes into the workforce aren't there in the same way. I just think there is a difficulty now about how you get young men educated to be proper men, not these sort of Andrew Tate nonsense.
That's what I was going to mention.
You know, but just, you know, decent members of society. And white boys in particular, working class boys in particular.
I'll tell you what part of the problem is, and I'll speak here as the youngest oldest person on the panel, so I probably know...
Apart from Charlotte.
No.
I'm much younger than you.
Am I older than you or younger than you?
No, you're much.
I shouldn't ask.
It's annoying.
Right. Sorry. Doesn't matter anyway. Part of the problem is young men these days are told they're all potential sex offenders. You go on the tube and there's warnings about do not look at women in a certain way, you're going to be nicked for this, nicked for that. They're told that they have privilege somehow, that white people especially are privileged, when, as you said, Paul, that white, young, working-class boys in this country are the most challenged sector demographic going. And then you're told that, you know, you grow up and you fill the vacuum with people like Andrew Tate, and then you're told if you like them, you're a racist or you're a bigot, and, you know, so...
Well, it's the parents. It's parents who should be telling you not to rub up against people on the tube or abuse people in restaurants. All these signs, you know, it should be the parents inculcating that from an early doors age, so that young men can grow up in an environment where they don't even think those things.
Can I ask a question? Has anyone seen Bridget Jones, the latest one?
Yes.
Because the young boy in it asks her to snog him, and she, of course, being of the previous generation, thinks it's really uncool and really pathetic, and, you know, he's obviously a bit scared. And I did notice then, I thought, God, that next generation, they have to be so careful and so guarded, don't they? They can't even snog Bridget Jones.
But I think that's why the Tate brothers, for example, have got such traction with a certain section of society. You find a lot of young men now, though, they've got no problem saying that they support those two men.
Yeah, no wonder the birth
Well,
rate's
let's not tarnish everybody. That was a very broad statement, Linda. You know, I'm sure there are millions and millions of young men who actually spurn it and are not interested and don't want to see anything that those two churn out.
Yeah, but there's a lot on record as saying that they do think they're perfectly fine. I mean, I've watched so many documentaries on those two men. And so
what's the bigger problem, Andrew and Tristan Tate, or the fact that people want to go to people like Andrew and Tristan Tate? I'd say it's the latter. You know, what's going on there? As I said, young men are being told, they're being emasculated and told that they're potential rapists and sexual offenders for... You know, how sad is that? As I said, no wonder the birth rate's in the gutter when young lads are scared now of even trying to put a kiss on a young lady at a disco or something. I mean, goodness me.
Are they not being raised in harmonious, happy relationships where they look at their parents and go, that's our relationship?
Yeah, where are the fathers? Absent fathers.
Right, fathers,
That's the point.
Should we talk about something even sadder?
OK.
Oh, maybe not. WH Smith's is apparently abandoning the high street. They are leaving our towns and cities. It's been a staple, according to the Sunday Times, of British high street since 1792. But they are now leaving the high street, footfall is down, and they are staying predominantly in airports, bus stations and so on, Peter.
Catastrophic on many levels. Catastrophic on many levels, because who's going to take over these empty shops? I suspect there won't be a queue of retailers wanting to fill them. And most importantly, I'm old school with a paper diary and a pen, so I still use Tipp-Ex. I'd like to say that other correctional fluids are available, but they're simply not. So where am I going to go to get my Tipp-Ex?
Amazon, that's the sad fact. Every single thing you can buy at WH Smith, you can buy at Amazon, except for a newspaper, and people are reading their newspapers on their tablets and their iPhones now.
Yeah.
But what about the post offices? What worries me, though, because a lot of the post offices have gone into WH Smith's premises, and so that's going to close too, and that's really dangerous.
About this. This is the death of the British high street, and I don't think it's reversible. I think what happens is you get some towns, I'm pretty fortunate to live in one, that become destination towns, and they've got independent retailers, they've got coffee shops, they've got restaurants, and they're fairly buzzy places. But you go to some towns, and it's like, literally, you would expect to see tumbleweed rolling down the street. And there isn't anything you can do about it, because guess what? Everyone who complains also buys their goods on Amazon.
There has to be something we must do something.
Turn them into flats. No, seriously, well, these high streets are dead, and we're building on the green belt. I want my next WH Smith. I want the next thing to happen to it is it become a block of flats.
OK, one more very quick story. We've got time for this one. Powers that be. Yeah, the Metropolitan Police, Peter Blexley, it is pricks. They've warned that farmers who bring tractors to a protest in central London could now face arrest. Of course, this comes off the back of the inheritance tax process. There we go, if you're watching on TV, hundreds of tractors lining the streets of the capital. The Force, the Met Police, has imposed conditions under the Public Order Act ahead of the next demonstration from farmers on Tuesday. Only a limited number of tractors arranged by organisers with prior police permission will be allowed at the event. Deputy Assistant Commissioner Ben Russell said, quote, due to lengthy road delays at previous rallies, it's our responsibility to ensure that protests don't cause serious disruption to the life of the community. Peter Blexley, what about just a stop oil. I never heard this kind of rhetoric from them about that lot.
No, but at least the Metropolitan Police are getting their acts together with regards to the Public Order Act, and they've clearly laid out the restrictions here. I was a fervent critic of those idiots at Just Stop Oil. It took the Met Police a very long time to get to grips with what they were doing, and the judiciary, and many of them were sent off to prison for a reasonable amount of time, which was very good. Doesn't matter who you are, when you're protesting, abide by the law. So I completely agree.
Well,
with
Paul
what
Richards...
Don't bring your tractor into London unless you've previously arranged it with the police.
It seems to me, maybe the Met will correct me, it seems to me the Met are paying more attention to this and being more proactive in stopping farmers protesting against inheritance tax raids than they do week in, week out of pro-Palestine processes in London, calling for intifadas, this and that, stupid placards, swastikas.
Agreed. I think it's the same issue.
Two-tier justice, two-tier policing.
It's the same issue because it means a group of people who think their rights outweigh everyone else's, so they can clog up the whole of the city, destroy business, destroy, tourists having a day out. My message to the farmers is stay at home and pay your taxes, but I would also want to see the Palestinian demonstrations.
Well, you wouldn't have any food then,
properly...
Paul, on your plate.
I would like to see...
The farmers have every right to protest. Just protest.
They do,
lawfully.
absolutely, yeah, exactly that. And the same with the ones that clog up the middle of London and Gaza. But it just needs to be done within the law, and other people don't have their rights infringed.
Yeah, I think, and as you know, I'm a very fervent critic of policing when it's deserved. I think the Met Police, with regards to protest, are slowly beginning to get their acts together. They've seen how frustrated people were about Just Stop Oil. They're beginning to grasp the frustrations over the Palestinian Solidarity Campaign marches. And clearly, with this farmers' march, they're getting ahead of the curveball, so to speak.
Oh, how convenient that it's the farmers they finally decide to get ahead of the curve, eh? Interesting. Shall we... the farmers as well, I'm not saying the farmers should do this, but if you look at the likes of Greece, where big protests and riots have been taking place in recent days, maybe the authorities would get a message in their head. But anyway, today marks the second anniversary of a tragic Greek train crash 2 years ago, which killed 57 people. These protests, though, in Greece, in Athens particularly, have spiralled completely out of control and made Athens look like a war zone. Take a look. I mean, Charlotte, it makes our farmers look like angels, doesn't it? Politely beeping their horns on a Tuesday afternoon in London.
That is pretty extreme. Last time I went to Athens, there was a protest, nothing to do with this. They do love a protest in Athens. They do. They regularly protest. It's
Like the
kind
French,
of a cultural thing there.
But I tell you what happened.
But this is really extreme.
But I tell you what had happened here. There were 57 people who did, but the inquiry went on and slowly but surely evolved that the crash had happened between a passenger train and a train that was carrying high-level toxic waste, and it shouldn't have been on board the second train. And when this came out very shortly before the protests, everyone went really, really mad. When you think about it, if it was your children on that train or your parent or your relative, and you know that there's a load of toxic waste in the other train, it's bound to be an incendiary moment,
Yeah, it's amazing they're still angry after all this time.
Well, catastrophically, there was a lot of young people killed in this crash.
Yes.
And there has been obstruction, obfuscation...
That's right.
From the authorities.
Yep.
Therefore, there has been difficulties in getting the truth out there.
No inquiry, no convictions, no report, no nothing.
That was their Hillsborough. That's how they see it.
And it was all, as you said, Peter and Linda, it was young students who predominantly died in that crash 2 years ago. All right, good luck to the Greeks getting some justice on that front. Coming up in just a sec, we're going to be talking more about the Jeffrey Epstein files. I did mention to Peter a bit earlier, the Attorney General in the United States promised this big release. They made a massive fanfare about it, didn't they, about releasing the Epstein files. Well, I'll tell you what happened when they did release something of a file just yesterday.
I forecast a perfect holiday in the sun.
Weather looking good then?
For sure, and no worries about our travel insurance.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
The recent showers over the Greek islands are fading away, so turning sunnier here, but we are looking at more wet weather across southern Spain and the Canaries. Through Sunday, there'll be plenty of showers over southern parts of Croatia, and there'll be some heavy showers on the west coast of Italy, Sardinia and Sicily, seeing some showers. Look at this wet weather over southern Spain and feeding down northerly winds, bringing a chill to Madeira, and plenty of showers over the Canaries. They'll continue well into next week. Bye for now.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Good evening. Welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast from the Met Office. Looking ahead to the next few days, it remains largely dry across the south, but further north we will continue to see some further rain from time to time. We still have this weak weather front across the country at the moment, separating the country in two. Still some rain left on it as we move through the course of this evening across northern England, but either side plenty of clear skies. Could see some mist and fog return across parts of East Anglia, southeastern parts of England too, and then later on in the night we could just see some mist and fog also for Northern Ireland and southern Scotland. Under the clearest skies, another cold night, especially in the south, widespread frost here, temperatures easily falling below freezing. So we start Sunday morning off on a fairly bright note across eastern Scotland, but cloud already beginning to spill back in across northwestern Scotland with an increase in wind here too. Southern Scotland, Northern Ireland, murky start in places with some mist and fog, but that should gradually lift as the day goes on. And for much of England and Wales, a fairly sunny start, and that really is going to continue as we go through the course of the day. It's here where we see the lion's share of the sunshine. Northern England, a little bit more limited with sunshine, with a mix of cloud and sunshine, but really the cloudiest skies will be for parts of Scotland, especially later on as this band of rain just approaches in from the Atlantic. Temperatures on Sunday, very similar to what we saw on Saturday, so highs reaching around 10 to 11 degrees. So in the sunshine, I think feeling pleasant enough for the time of year. A look ahead to Monday, another cold, frosty start in the south, but once again, largely sunny skies here. A band of rain just slowly working its way southeastwards, but weakening as it does so. So by the time it gets to England, very little rainfall left on it. And then behind it, we'll see further showers. And really very little changes middle of the week, largely settled in the south, but further rainfall at times across the north.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, and as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Headliners on GB News 11 p.m. every night. It's got 3 top comedians going through the next day's newspapers so you don't have to read them, which is great.
That's a good point.
He's lying. Maybe he's not lying.
That's Headliners every night from 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. as well on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Time now for big weekend fails. I'm going to start first with this.
Breaking news right now, you're going to see some Epstein information being released by my office.
What kind? Are we going to see who was on the flights? Are we going to see any evidence from what he recorded? Because he had all of his homes wired with recording devices.
Yeah. What you're going to see, hopefully tomorrow, is a lot of flight logs, a lot of names, a lot of information. But it's pretty sick what that man did.
No, we didn't, Pam Bondi, Attorney General of the United States. We didn't see anything new. It was a rehashed flight log information, evidence in previous court cases. There was nothing, Peter. They made a massive fanfare over releasing this new stuff. Donald Trump had promised in the election campaign to release the Epstein files, quote unquote, and what we got was pathetic, to say the least.
Yeah, but Pam Bondi has expressed her disappointment at what was declared to her, and she is endeavouring to have more information released by all accounts. Now, I'm sure I speak for many, many people that would like the full depravity of Epstein's perversions declared so that we can see exactly who else may or may not have been a party to all his revolting behaviour. Let's keep our powder dry for a little while, because I'm hoping that there might be more to come. Let's remember she's a Trump appointee, and this new broom was promised to sweep clean, and we hope to see the information. Let's keep our fingers crossed.
Isn't Ghislaine Maxwell supposed to have, you know, some records that she's going to somehow disclose? Isn't that?
Yeah, like an insurance policy.
Yeah. I think that'll be interesting.
Well, look, call me a conspiracy theorist, but the Sunday Mirror tomorrow, Ghislaine Maxwell saying, or asking apparently Donald Trump to give her a pardon. She's doing 20 years in the slammer. What has she got? What info has she got, Linda? Who knows?
It makes you wonder,
yeah, of course, Bill Clinton, Donald Trump, both travelling on Epstein's jet previously, and there is, Google this, it's very bizarre, there's a portrait of Bill Clinton that was in Epstein's home in the British... I was in New York.
I think.
Of Clinton wearing red heels, high heels. That was a proper portrait in his home. It was seized. It's gone. So bizarre. Anyway, if the United States government is watching, please release the Epstein files. We'd all appreciate it very much. Peter, what's your big weekend fail?
Well, I found Starmer in the Oval Office a bit nauseating.
Right.
He fawned over Donald Trump so much. Now, I'll appreciate those who say, well, Starmer knew how to pull Trump's strings, how to massage his ego and how to get out of it what he wanted. But I just felt much of it was nauseating. Yes, please.
Let's have a look.
It is my pleasure to bring from His Majesty the King a letter. He sends his best wishes and his regards, of course, but he also asked me to bear this letter and bring it to you. So can I present the letter from the King?
Thank you very much. Am I supposed to read it right now?
Yeah, please do.
Paul, what do you make of the crossed legs there from Keir Starmer? Should a man cross his legs?
Yeah, why not?
Yeah?
He's crossing his legs right now.
No, I'm a big fan. I'm definitely not.
I do sometimes, but some people were saying that Donald Trump was sat there mansplaining while Keir Starmer was legs crossed, a bit emasculated.
Trump does do this sort of, you know, alpha male body language thing, doesn't he? He does the big handshakes and spreads out all over the place. But I mean, you know.
All right, time now for your fail, Paul. Let's take a look.
Not in a good position. You don't have the cards right now. With us, you start having cards. But right now, you don't. You're playing cards. You're playing cards. You're gambling with the lives of millions of people. You're gambling with World War III. You're gambling with World War III. And what you're doing is very disrespectful to the country, this country. That's back to you. Far more than a lot of people said they should have.
So who was your fail there, Trump or Zelensky?
No, it's neither of them. It's Vance who triggered that whole incident. Vance set him off, you know, like lighting the touch paper. And I think, to be honest, A, it triggered a major sort of diplomatic incident, but B, I think it's Vance on manoeuvres. I think he wanted to be in the limelight, and then that sort of meant Trump had to sort of raise his game as well. But, I mean, Vance is very ambitious.
So you're throwing the Vice President under the bus?
Correct.
Got it.
J.D. Vance is ex-military, and I've had the great pleasure in my life of meeting a lot of ex-military fellas and calling some of them friends. When you go to the pub with an ex-military bloke, number one, it's quite handy because they're useful should it kick off, for example. And the other thing is, and people who've got ex-military mates will know this, sometimes they do just open their mouths at the moment when you might want to...
This guy's the Vice President. In the military, he was in a communications role, so he should have known better.
Linda, let's take a look at your big weekend fail. What is it? Let's have a look.
What did it need to come to?
Tell us why you escalated it to this level, because I don't understand. I posted something that he posted. You come to arrest me, you don't arrest him. Why has it come to this? Why am I in cuffs? Because there's something he shared, then I shared.
Because someone has been caused, obviously, anxiety based upon your social media page.
What's going on there, Linda?
So that policeman has turned up at that guy's house because a social media post has given someone inside the house Anxiety.
Yeah, what a joke. What a bunch of snowflakes. All right, thank you, panel. Let's see what Leo Kearse has in store for headliners coming up. Leo, what's in your box of tricks?
We've got Nick, the Big Dog Dixon, and Stephen Allen on the panel tonight. It's going to be great. We're going to be covering the fallout from Zelenskyy versus Trump. They had handbags in the car park outside Wetherspoons, it looked like to me. And some people are calling for the UK state visit to be cancelled. Also, will Ghislaine be demanding a pardon from Trump? We're seeing the Epstein client list being released, as you mentioned. Funnily enough, David Copperfield was on that, so he couldn't make his name disappear from that.
Magic. Leo, thank you very much. Thank you to my panel tonight, Peter, Linda, Charlotte and Paul. Thank you for your company at home. As ever, I've really appreciated you being with us. I'm back tomorrow from 9 p.m. Up next, it's Headliners. That's after your weather with Craig. Good night.
A nice bright morning will generate a lovely warm day, right through to the evening. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good evening. Welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast from the Met Office. Looking ahead to the next few days, it remains largely dry across the south, but further north we will continue to see some further rain from time to time. We still have this weak weather front across the country at the moment, separating the country in two. Still some rain left on it as we move through the course of this evening across northern England, but either side plenty of clear skies. Could see some mist and fog return across parts of East Anglia, southeastern parts of England too, and then later on in the night we could just see some mist and fog also for Northern Ireland and southern Scotland. Under the clearest skies, another cold night, especially in the south, a widespread frost here, temperatures easily falling below freezing. So we start Sunday morning off on a fairly bright note across eastern Scotland, but cloud already beginning to spill back in across northwestern Scotland with an increase in wind here too. Southern Scotland, Northern Ireland, murky start in places with some mist and fog, but that should gradually lift as the day goes on. And for much of England and Wales, a fairly sunny start, and that really is going to continue as we go through the course of the day. It's here where we see the lion's share of the sunshine. Northern England, a little bit more limited with sunshine, with a mix of cloud and sunshine, but really the cloudiest skies will be for parts of Scotland, especially later on as this band of rain just approaches in from the Atlantic. Temperatures on Sunday very similar to what we saw on Saturday, so highs reaching around 10 to 11 degrees. So in the sunshine, I think feeling pleasant enough for the time of year. A look ahead to Monday, another cold, frosty start in the south, but once again, largely sunny skies here. A band of rain just slowly working its way southeastwards, but weakening as it does so. So by the time it gets to England, very little rainfall left on it. And then behind it, we'll see further showers. And really very little changes middle of the week, largely settled in the south, but further rainfall at times across the north.
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
It's the final week to see how you could be one of two big winners in our latest giveaway, as we have two prize bundles that have to be won. There's two lots of a totally tax-free £10,000 in cash. You'll also receive a brand new iPhone 16, along with £500 in shopping vouchers to spend at your favourite store. Hurry, lines close on the 7th of March. For another chance to win, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 632.